How you doing?
Oh, hi. How are you?
Oh, hi. How's it going?
It's going all right.
Good. Yeah, so again, I was off mic there for a second, but this is Cultural Warfare with Jon Croft, and Rebecca's here, and we're talking about why artists must do networking. It's not negotiable. Why that is. So Rebecca sent me a video today. It was pretty cool, from a lady named Tarra Lu. She's a visual artist, a fine artist. You can find her on YouTube, Tarralu. And she talks about finding herself as an artist. She talks about why it was difficult for her as an artist. She talks about a lot of things, but the videos I'm talking about are her most recent ones, which are about kind of like about community, right? Which is something I talk about quite a bit because I see that there's a lack of community. And so her latest two videos are about kind of finding support from those around you, your family and friends, mostly the most intimate people you know, finding that you're not always getting that support that you want from them to be an artist. And this was totally my 20s, all of my 20s. And so in a way, I wish I had seen her video back then. But it's kind of about finding your footing as an artist, your identity as an artist. And that's kind of her solution, is understanding that you might be actually putting kind of like a burden on the people around you to support you when they're not really obligated to support you. And obviously the most difficult is when your parents don't support you. That's probably the most difficult scenario. Wouldn't you say, Rebecca?
Yeah, absolutely. And I really liked what she was saying about your friends and family. They just might not be your audience.
Yes.
I thought that was a really insightful comment.
Very insightful.
Because it doesn't mean that you don't agree with them on stuff. It doesn't mean that they don't love you. It doesn't mean they don't think you're amazing. They might just not get it. They might just not get what you're doing, the tone or the style, or
well, they're not an artist, possibly. So they're not necessarily artists, so they don't necessarily get what it's like for artists or the journey that artists have to go through.
Yeah.
You know, which is definitely true for my parents.
Yeah, so I think it's good to keep that in mind, that they might not be your audience, and that they might not be the people you're targeting, and that's okay. You can literally still have a good relationship with them and them just not really get what you're doing, and that's okay. I mean, you can maybe imagine marriages where I don't know, I always hear this scenario where like the wife is like a math teacher, and then like the husband does something else completely different, like he's an art teacher or something, like, but somehow they agree, they come together and they agree.
Yes.
And they find common ground, even though the husband might not be able to sit in on the math teacher's class and enjoy it or understand it, but they can still meet on common ground.
Yeah, I found that something really astute there. She was saying, she just kind of briefly touched on it, but it really touched me because it's more my situation, which is the fact that it's true that my parents weren't my supporters much, but they're my supporters in other ways. And also, probably that wasn't as difficult for me as it was that I wasn't getting any mentorship. So like in the arts. So like I feel like that kind of held me behind about 10 years basically, where I wasn't getting the mentorship in the arts, and so I didn't feel confident to head out into the arts right away. I felt like I still had to kind of do plan B first, and the plan B was basically to try to make it through college and to try to find another career, basically, and then do arts on the side until that became bigger, which is what a lot of sensible people say. My parents are those kinds of people. They're very sensible people. But one thing I couldn't do much myself was get control over my own interests enough to where I could kind of force myself to do certain things. That was something I always found difficult. And it was always true for me in school, too. If I just wasn't interested in a subject, I would do the minimum amount of work on that subject. And so when you're an adult, there's lots of things you don't have to do, including you don't have to pursue this job or that job. So I literally would just not pursue jobs that I wasn't interested in. Yeah. And I wasn't interested in 99% of jobs.
Right.
I was just not interested in them. But I think if I had a mentor, what the mentor would do is give me practical kind of like help on, well, maybe try this first and then do that and then do that. Like just practical things that are good reminders just in living. And because I was thinking very idealistically, and so I was thinking, well, why would I pursue this job if I'm not interested and I probably can't do it? And all I think about all day is arts. So which is why I ended up doing factory work a lot, because you don't have to do much thinking in factory work. So my mind was always then thinking about my music, and I got to like take a little pad of paper in my back pocket, and I would always just write down lyrics and write down music ideas in between assembly work and factory work.
Yeah.
And so I could pull it out in like a second and write something down in like 2 seconds and then be like, put it back. And it was always on my mind. And so I wrote a lot of songs that way, actually, in a factory, because a factory is all rhythmic anyway. You're in this rhythmic room.
Yeah.
It's like you're inside of a drum. And so like there was something very good for me in factory work as a musician, because I didn't have to worry about a lot of stuff. I did my work. I never caused trouble. And like all I did was sit there and do my job and then write notes every like 10 minutes. I'd write a note or something like that, maybe 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And then just go back on my work. And it never got in the way of my work. Nobody ever mentioned me pulling out my notepad. Nobody cared. So it's like that worked for me quite well. And if I hadn't taken a trip out west, I probably could have kept this particular job I had for a few years. But I ended up going through so many jobs. You could not even imagine how many jobs I went through as an artist in my 20s, in my 30s. I went. Do you remember the final count, honey?
30 something.
It was about 35 jobs.
Wow.
And so that was about 3 jobs a year that I went through.
Oh, wow.
There was one year I did one job, like the whole year. That was the longest stint I had a job, was about a year. Until I got into film and video and stuff like that. So that was till I was about 33 years old. So I worked a job every few months and then got fired or something happened. I never tried to lose the job, really. Just something got in the way, and which was actually quite frustrating, because I'm thinking, what's wrong with me? But now it's like water under the bridge, but it's like at the time it's very difficult, because I just thought, like I just want a stable job, and then I can start doing art on the side.
Yeah.
I could never even find a stable job, and we're talking about 15 years. So that was a difficult, 10 to 15 years. But so that was the difficulty for me, is just getting honest mentorship that was like somebody who was actually trying to help me instead of just like talk down to me and give me advice that had nothing to do with my life.
I love what you're saying about mentorship, because like I'm seeing a lot of instances where that could be just very useful, like a spiritual mentor or a mentor for a kid who, maybe like there's nothing, like their family is fine. It's not like a bad family situation, but maybe they want to talk to someone who is more their style, or who is more like living the life that they see themselves living when they grow up.
Right. Right.
Oh, I just realized I've been inspired by a Tuttle Twins episode again.
Oh, nice. That's great.
So they have this one about college.
Mm-hmm. That's a good one. That's a good one.
It is a really good one, but they're emphasizing, toward the end anyways, they're emphasizing reaching out to people who are doing what you want to do,
mm-hmm.
and just asking them, for questions and support. And yeah, when I think of like, now I don't know about you, but when I was in my 20s, I really had a clear picture of the life that I wanted, and I was not super interested in having a mentor. Now there was a moment when I was in college where I really, really did want. It was a very topsy-turvy time, and I really
mm-hmm.
did want like an older Christian lady in my life to just step in and be like, honey, here's what you need to do.
Yeah.
I really wanted that. And
I remember that too.
Yeah.
Because you were in Fort Lauderdale, and you were like, there was a lady you knew that was Haitian, and you liked her, and she was a Christian, and she was, remember her? I don't remember a lot about her, but you said that she was not necessarily a mentor, but she was kind of like, she gave you some help or some guidance or some.
Yeah. I think I remember what you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. I think I was hoping for more. I don't know. But now thinking about it, now I'm a little bit older and we have kids and stuff, and just really seeing the value of a mentor. And I know you've talked before about apprentices and
right.
being someone's apprentice. And I really think these are things that need to come back.
Absolutely. Yeah.
In a major way, because now, not to be confused with this idea that there's some grown-up out there who knows exactly what you should do with your life, and you need to listen to what they say and do everything they say.
Right.
That's
not realistic. Yeah.
The idea is that you make a connection with someone who is on your page, you're on their page.
Well, he at least is a professional and knows kind of how, at least they understand the pathway for you also to become a professional.
They share your passions.
Maybe some of them, yeah.
And they are going to encourage you in them rather than talk you out of them.
Right. That's pretty important.
Yeah.
And not that they're trying to twist your arm into anything, but they're just kind of like, they know at least how you can become successful. They already like this kind of field, and they are willing to help you to achieve something. And I think of it too, like, it's kind of like if you have that kind of uncle in your family that's kind of like, maybe it's not necessarily that he's smart or that he's great or something, but you have like an uncle, a sweet uncle, or somebody that's like helpful. They're just like helpful. They treat you like an adult, and they don't talk down to you, and they just kind of like offer help. And they might not know everything. They might not have good advice in all ways of life, right? Like maybe they don't have the best relationships or whatever. But it's like I had an uncle, for example, that was in the construction business, and had he not had some very negative things happen in his life, I probably could have gotten a job with his company doing masonry work, and I probably wouldn't have minded that. But because of that difficulty, and that was actually true in a lot of relationships that I saw, including fellow artists, where I didn't want to get too close to them because they weren't necessarily the best example, in many ways. And so, one problem with mentorship is that this guy wants to come alongside you and tell you how to do things that have nothing to do with the job. Like they're not necessarily professional people. And so that's one of the dangers, it's true, of mentorship and apprenticeship, is that you're going to find it's like going to school and there's like a teacher who wants to be your friend and they just continue to give you bad advice. It's like, are these people even adults? Do you know what I mean? Like, so yes, that is a potential problem, but that's kind of a separate issue. So you have to find that mentor that's actually an adult, who actually is a professional and someone you can trust.
Yeah.
They're not creepy and weird. They're and so and this is why what you said about apprenticeship programs is really important, because an apprenticeship program literally solves all those problems. Like they have to be professional. There should not be any weird stuff going on because it's part of their business. It's part of their company to have an apprenticeship program. So I actually recommend to a lot of artists to do something in the trades, because if I had known that when I was in my 20s, I could have easily done the trades for like a good 10, 15 years and then left the trades when I was like 35 and then done very well for myself. And
like a trade school?
Yeah, not even a trade school, but like for example, there's a local electrician business that has an apprenticeship training program. I almost went through it actually. And there's plenty of trades like that are businesses, and they might take only a few apprentices a year, or they might have a larger program. But I recommend that to a lot of artists because with apprenticeship, you're actually kind of honing a craft like the arts. You're learning how to do something really well. You're learning how to show up day in and day out and do a job. You're learning how to be professional. And if you're an artist, trades are not going to be as hard for you. Like the trades are going to be a lot easier for you than for a lot of people. Because if you're an artist, you tend to be hands-on. You tend to care about quality. Like you tend to like eye stuff and see it, and like you know that's a good, you know what I mean? Like you can eye stuff, and what I mean by that is you're very observant, and you can see the quality of something pretty quickly. When a lot of people aren't like quality people, they're not looking at things closely. And so I'm one of those people. Like I'm very like high detail kind of person. And so now that I'm doing things like, since my garage conversion I did like 2-3 years ago, I'm like realizing, man, I could have done a lot of trades because I had to teach myself a lot of this stuff to do my garage conversion. And now I'm like I could do plumbing. I could do probably 75% of all plumbing now. I can do it just because I learned enough to do it myself. There's some stuff I still can't do with plumbing, but I mean, I trained myself that. So it's like, and also I can probably do about 30-40% of electrical work now. Not a lot of the heavy stuff, but all the small stuff in your wall, I can do all that stuff now.
Wow.
It's not that hard, actually. And then I can do a little bit of woodwork stuff, but not very much yet. And then I learned roofing, a little bit of roofing. Like, I've learned a lot of stuff just having a house and being in the last few years. And so it's like, now I realize, man, this stuff would have been easy for me in my 20s. Like, easy for me. But I just didn't have someone to go like, hey, you should be doing this in this way, and here's where you go, here's what you do, and just kind of lay it out, And then someone who, if you're like, I don't know about that, they're not pushing you, right? They're just like giving you advice. Yeah. And what I got is a lot of people pushing me to do stuff. That was the only solution. And so like, that's really difficult when you have someone like that around you. That's not really a mentor, like it's just somebody who, you're kind of in their way. And so like, that's not really a helpful person. But I got a lot of that, like in my 20s. And so like that, but back to kind of like these videos, I was talking about Tarra Lu. She's got some good videos. Like it's true, she's a visual artist. And it's a little different for the different arts, but not a lot. It's really not that much different from one form of art to another, in the sense of bringing yourself up and training yourself, or getting training from someone else, or doing, what we're talking about tonight, which is networking. And so why should you network? Well, there's no guarantee you're going to have a support system as an artist. And the truth is that, just like how Rebecca was talking about your true audience and your false audience, often the support system you grow up with is not the support system you end up with, because many of them are your false audience. They're not real audience. They kind of want you to become what they want you to be. And they don't understand where you really want or need to go as an artist. So often those people you grow up with are the people that are kind of like holding you back. So, I wish I had known that myself as well, because I was always trying to convince my family or convince other friends to come alongside and be like, hey, look at my vision, look what I'm doing. And getting kind of like, not pushback, but kind of a lot of like dismissiveness, right? Or not honest help. And so this was kind of my own doing in many ways. And so you have to do what this lady, Tarra Lu, suggests, which is finding your tribe. And that's basically going networking enough, and also putting your product out there enough, and trying to be helpful to others enough to where you start forming an authentic audience who's also made up of peers. And so many of your peers will actually be a good part of your audience. They'll help you and you help them. If you find friends like that are like peers, many times your peers could be your first supporters. They're the ones who are like, I like your work, I'm going to support you. And you don't necessarily even have to have this unwritten agreement, but the agreement could be, well, let's collab together, or let's support each other. Like, you like my videos, I'll like your videos. You like what I'm doing, you buy one of my pieces of art, I'll buy one of your pieces of art. And so that's the kind of friends you really want to find in networking groups, is those people you can kind of like commingle with in that way. So, but this is all stuff I wish I had known like 20 years ago, 15, 20 years ago. But in the meantime, what I did find on a practical level in my life, what I found was that, for a filmmaker, because eventually I became a filmmaker, for a filmmaker, it's really about getting press on your, and eyeballs on your films. And so, you start building a reputation among fellow film people, but then, so you can get on sets and work on sets. But, that could be a list of all 10 people or something like that. So you can do quite a bit. But then once you make your own film and you get out there and you start going to like festivals, stuff like that, it depends on what part you play in filmmaking, but at some point you're going to start hearing about people talking about pitching films, and you're going to start hearing about how if you have a vision to do something, you're going to have to learn how to express that vision. And so even if you're just a cinematographer working on a film, or you're a crew member, you have a vision too. Like, you have something you're shooting for and aiming for. You want to work on these kinds of films, right? Like, if you're an actor, often actors are looking for certain kinds of directors, because like how smart actors are, because what actors do is they start honing their craft with their fellow actors, right? But then they need to look for product. They need to look for scripts and projects that will hire them on. And a script often comes with a director, or a director with a script. And so you'll get to know directors. And then what you'll find is that once you start finding your place as an actor, you'll start to see, oh, I'm this kind of an actor. Like, this is the kind of part I like to play, or the people have said I play really well. So I want to hone this kind of actor, or this kind of, it's not like you're kind of trying to hedge yourself in, but you are kind of trying to hedge yourself in as it comes to the kind of tropey roles you want to play. I know tropey sounds like a bad thing, but it's not always a bad thing at all. Some actors find a good place playing a certain kind of role. And so what they end up doing is looking for directors that have those kinds of roles, or they tend to write these kinds of characters. Or they want to like chew up scenery, and that means they want to kind of go with a director that writes the kind of scenery that they want to chew up, like something really dramatic. And so those are the kind of directors then they start to surround themselves with. And really the way to do this is networking. I mean, because you're not always going to just fall into the right crowd of filmmakers, right? The ones that have the kind of roles that you want. Sometimes you need to craft that role, and you need to craft that job. And that means you need to have some choices, out on the field. And so networking provides that opportunity for you. But even more, right, for people like me who are writer, director, producers, where I'm originating projects, what that means for me is I'm looking for two kinds of people. I'm looking for crew and cast, right? This is the first kind of person. I don't mean to lump them together, but at this stage where I'm networking, I do lump them together because I'm looking for the kinds of people that are going to work for this script I have, right? And then the second kinds of people I'm looking for is people who can invest or support, right, this kind of script. So those are the people I pitch to, right? Because I'm not going to be pitching necessarily to an actor or a crew member, right? I'm going to be pitching to somebody who might be a potential investor. However, sometimes that is an actor but where I live, the actors I know are not like big time celebrity actors. They're just local actors. So they don't tend to be, like big time actors that you need to bring money to your project. So my point in all this is to say you have to hone your ability to pitch. And this is actually what I was trying to do when I brought Film Bar Mondays to Tampa Bay, is I was learning from going to AFM and going to film festivals and, mixers and things like this, and this is what they tell you in books even. If you read books about like how to become a good scriptwriter or whatever, they say you're going to need to get your elevator pitch ready. And, after you've written your script and after you've written all your treatment and all this stuff, and you sometimes you work your way from a beat sheet. Sometimes you work your way to a beat sheet, right? Like you write the whole script and then you eventually get to a log line. Some writers are that way. I'm the other way around. I tend to start with the big ideas and then I work my way down to the actual script. And then I break down my own script after it's done, etc. So like I tend to go from more broad to like more specific. That just tends to be my process. But what that means is I can actually start pitching pretty early on, before I finish my script at all. So that can kind of give me an advantage, It gives me some flexibility where I can play with these big ideas and say, well, this is what I've got going on. And then if they say, oh, I wish you were going in this direction with your story, guess what? I can change my script. I mean, of course, you can change your script at any time, right? But I'm not precious about it, is my point. And so I can start learning pitching pretty early on with a project. But the problem was, right, there wasn't enough people to pitch to. Like, you really need authentic situations. I don't mean you have to be in an elevator to do an elevator pitch. I mean you have to be like, at a film festival, at a mixer or something, where you're authentically meeting people for the first time. That's a great place to actually pitch. And so I saw the need locally, because generally in the Tampa Bay region, we have kind of networking groups that aren't even that social. They're just kind of like, not that they're not social, but they're kind of like a classroom environment, right? Where it's like, somebody's going to teach me something, I'm going to sit and take it all in, and then I'm going to say thank you, and go home. I've learned something, right? That's great. Or you see a film and you talk about the film, because oftentimes these networking meetings are tied together with, let's watch someone's short film. Let's watch local film director's short film, talk about the film. And that's great too. But what's even better than all this is authentically meeting someone for the first time at a mixer in which it's all about talking. It's not about a presentation. It's just talking. And this gives you the most authentic experience for when you're actually rubbing elbows with real industry types who will listen to real pitches. So these aren't people you met last week and you saw their short film with. No, these are people you've never met. You need to get comfortable. You need to learn how to pitch to people on the fly. And I barely got that experience locally. I had to go to AFM. It was actually very hard at first at AFM to do that, and so I knew I had to hone this ability even more. Eventually I got better at it. I didn't sell anything at AFM. I'm not saying I got that good, but because my projects, my story ideas tended to not be the things that they were looking for at AFM. I have very unconventional ideas. So, and Hollywood is very risk averse. So this doesn't tend to work, essentially. So the concept here is that artists, who tend to be the very people who are introverted or who don't feel like they need social situations to make things happen, or social advice in social situations makes them less confident often as an artist. These are the very people who often need extra support to keep going, or need extra leads to help expand their project to the next level, but they're not in the situations that they need to be to make those connections. And so, in other words, they're not honing, they're not forcing themselves to go out there and do that. And so they tend to, I'm not going to say it tends to devolve, but it's kind of like they tend to stay in their own environment, in their own small group. And this is often just not good for artists. Artists need new ideas. They need new people and supporters around them. They need to find more of their authentic audience. And, we can get kind of bogged down in our little social group and start to feel like, well, I'm making my art. I don't need anything else, and the truth is sometimes you just don't know what you don't know. So you don't know that there's some other person out there that has often the help you need, or they're the audience member that really gives you the confidence because maybe they're also an artist and they know the talent that you have. So they can give you that kind of extra support. But, you know, social media can help in this way, but it can also make things even more difficult. I found that social media is just a place where a lot of inauthenticity happens. A lot of that happens on social media. So much more than in person. And in person, I find that the only reason it gets inauthentic is because we're out of practice with people. And we ourselves are also not being authentic. And so that's actually a problem. And if we just kind of sit with problems and don't solve them, then that's not very healing for us. So really, the good thing is if you go out and you try to start kind of like calming down and get to know people and actually try to just contribute to someone else. Try to give something to someone else and be someone else's help. The very help that you maybe need or want, be that thing to someone else. And I think if you start out doing that, then the chances are you'll find authentic help after that, because you'll be putting your best foot forward, being authentic first. Because that's what it takes to be a friend, right? Is to have a friend, is you have to be a friend first. So these are all like really important things we have to learn and get over this hump before we can kind of make it to the larger issue of, like, let's say for filmmaking, the larger question is the next big film project. How do I get to that next big film project, like bigger than the last? Well, you got to meet new people. You got to get new investors. And you got to be able to make a film with a larger budget. So it's unavoidable that you need new investors. And so, you know, if your last picture didn't bring in that investor, well, you're going to have to find another way to get that investor. Because that's generally how it works is you make a big project, as big as you can make on your own. And then you get from that the support you need to make the next bigger project. And then this snowballs, right? You're making another bigger project you've never made before. And then people see that. But if there's like a break in this snowball where people aren't seeing your films, you're not able to get a bigger project next time, now you're kind of bogged down, right? And so you need to do something like networking to get past this quite often. And when you're not able to do that, well, that's just, you're going to be continually bogged down and continue to make the same level of quality of project instead of getting better, right? Instead of maybe getting to the place where you're making more money, or for a filmmaker, it's making money at all. Like quite often in film, whether it's independent film or what have you, typically an independent filmmaker is not making a lot of money, if any at all. Unless you're like a cinematographer, one of the larger craftsmen or crew members, those people will do well, typically. But like a lot of the people under them, or the people like me, the writer-directors, they are often, if they get any money, they're putting it back into their project. They're not using that money for income. So, because they always want the next project to be bigger. So, and the idea is that they get more eyeballs on it. So they can finally attract that investor and then finally make the kind of project that they really have been wanting to make. So for a filmmaker especially, this is a necessary thing. You have to learn how to do pitching and networking and just kind of relaxing and rubbing elbows with other artists like you. So, I mean, it's really how you get things done, especially in the more social art forms like film. You know, film, music, they're both pretty social. You know, high art and fine art, not as much. But you could be a musician just in your bedroom, you know what I mean? Like, and put stuff out online. A lot of people are doing that now, like, and they're not touring or anything. So, but, you know, these become kind of like day-to-day jobs. And whether you're making money, though, is another matter. But, you know, a lot of people are doing that kind of stuff. And so my concern is that if you're going to form a community to make new kinds of work, which this is what we're working on right now, is forming newer communities to make conservative and Christian work, American kind of work, forming a new film movement, for example, you're going to need new networking groups. And so you're going to have to attract a certain kind of artist. And then from that, you can form organizations, you can form events like film festivals, you can form all kinds of things around this movement and around these networking groups. So that's the kind of stuff I'll be working on. Like in the next year, I expect I'm going to be restarting Film Bar Mondays. We're going to be working on my Film Thin Days, as well as working on a variety of podcasts and short films. And, you know, where I came from, podcasts were not that big of a deal, you know, 10 years ago, 5 years ago. Now they're like ubiquitous, and everybody, you know, is like talking on podcasts. I don't mean everybody literally, but like, you know, if you're trying to make your way into this world of film and art and stuff like this, there's probably a local podcaster that's like, hey, you want to talk about this or that? And I'm one of those people, by the way. So, you know, you might hear from me and say like, oh, you're a filmmaker? Hey, you want to make a podcast? And they're going to be like, what? What are you talking about? Like, why would I make a podcast if I'm a filmmaker? Well, guess what? I have a camera. I have a mic. I have sometimes a script. I have all, you know, lights. I have almost all the things you need when you're making a film, and I'm doing it just for myself with a podcast. So it's like you're basically doing a very similar craft, except this is a day-to-day gig. And the film gig is like maybe once a year you're doing like a month where you're shooting. Maybe, at least for me, you know, I'm not a crew member, so it's like I'm trying to originate my projects. It might be once a year. I make a film maybe twice a year. Lately, not at all. But I'm getting back into the swing of it, right? So it might end up being about a film or two a year. And the rest of the year, what am I doing with this equipment? How am I using my technical knowledge, right? And then I learned and realized, oh, if I want to raise up fellow artists, right, raise up fellow filmmakers in my film networking group, which was kind of what I was doing in the Film Bar Mondays group. At least that was the attempt, right? To find and raise up younger filmmakers who can learn to be better filmmakers. Well, the truth is, if you want to start out doing something that's complicated and hard and difficult, don't do the most difficult thing you can do. Do the easiest thing, right? And work your way up the ranks. And then you're learning all these different disciplines. And at least that's my belief, is that as a filmmaker, if you learn all the different disciplines, now you can direct people better. You know everything that they have to do. You can give realistic kind of direction and deadlines and things like this. and you don't have to kind of second guess yourself as much. But if you're not willing to kind of work your way up on these easier jobs, right, then, you know, I have less trust for you as like a director or producer or one of these higher roles. I put less faith in you because, you know, I think that you should know more, frankly, before you get to that point. And if you're going to be leading people, you know, who are underneath you in your department, you need to kind of know what that job entails. So, in other words, if you want to make a short film, for example, before you make a feature film, I would do something even easier than that. I would film a podcast, right? So what sets a podcast above another podcast? Well, when it has visuals, you know, when it has some video. And, you know, the biggest podcast in the world, Joe Rogan, 3 hours of video he puts out every few days, you know. And so, like, this is actually not that hard if you want to learn filmmaking, you know, but you should at least practice it, right? And so if you want to practice these techniques and practice, you know, your craft, then starting on something that's less pressure, lower pressure, like you don't have to frame the shot perfectly, right? You don't have to worry about as much of the artistry of it. You just figure out the technicals, right? Well, that's a great thing to do starting out as a filmmaker. Start out making podcasts. Start out making video, right? Make a video business. There's a lot of stuff you can do before you get to like the big leagues. And if you learn all of your tools really well, then doing a bigger role in filmmaking is going to be a lot easier for you too. Much sooner. So that's one of the things I challenge people to do is think outside of their box and be like, you know what, if this is a role I could do now, instead of like hoping for this bigger role later, just do this role now. You'll learn more. And so that's one of the things I have planned in the near future is to do podcast work, more podcast work, so that I can kind of like bring some other fellow filmmakers up through podcasts and short film and feature film. And then we can all kind of like learn all the roles. So, and I can teach some of these roles. But, yeah, so I just want to challenge a lot of local artists, but not just local, like people around the country. If they want to start making art, they need to learn how to network and meet with people and be kind, be respectful, and give something to others before you expect them to give something to you. You know, listen to people instead of just talking at people. Yeah. And those are difficult skills for a lot of people, listening. So, but that's really the way to make friends, and to kind of understand people, understand where they're coming from. And you cannot do that without listening to people. It's just not possible. So there's a lot of like, and social media has done this to us as well. It's made us very like immediate, where it's transactional, and we just kind of want to get something, accomplish something, and leave. Like, we don't treat people as people. We treat them as like assets to use. And so this is like a big mistake with community. You know, like that's not really what a community is. A community is just like, it's more like a family, right? You're part of this group. You have to contribute something, really. And when you're always the only one not contributing anything, you kind of stand out, right? It's like, what are you doing here? And so a family kind of loves each other, and they work together to do things. And not everybody's thinking about themselves all the time. So you're thinking about others. You're thinking about like, well, what are they doing? What are they planning? Maybe I can help them in some way, right? And then you're kind of like, your projects are the afterthought. And the good thing about that too is you don't even have to have things you're doing. You can just involve yourself in what other people are doing, and you can learn a great deal from them, and then come up with much better projects later, because you've already seen kind of how these projects worked out. You've seen kind of the good and the bad, and you kind of know what's more successful at that point. And so your projects could be more successful later on. But like, I just find that that's something we don't have as much today, but we need it in spades. Like, we need people who are committed to the community, people who are not just thinking of themselves all the time, don't treat everything transactionally, like you're just a nobody, and instead start treating people authentically, like you're a real human being, and make it local. Like, don't just make it on social media. Like, find a group locally, and maybe with your church or with, another professional networking group, or start something yourself. Like, if you're in film, the guy in Atlanta that I got Film Bar Mondays from, his name is Charles Judson. He was perfectly willing to let me use the name and the networking idea, and he would let you take it to your city. Like, so, try something like that, and it might just work. So this is how big things happen, guys. Big things happen by being friendly, by being thoughtful, by being loving, by being a stable place. Like, a stable family creates things, Yeah. Stability is a great jumping point. And when you're coming from a place of instability all the time, like, I have to be instantly famous and all this stuff. This is just not stability. This is just like dreams and wishes and, no, like, you need stability. And that often comes in friendships that aren't going to go away anytime soon, right? Like, they're real friends. I mean, don't expect the world from them. Like, don't expect them to support all of your projects or your project ideas. But, like, at least expect them to be there and show up and be nice to you. Like, that's something I think that we can expect from ourselves. And so I think, that's a fair thing to want for your group. But I think that people really need to remember that networking has not gone away as an important thing in filmmaking or in the arts, or just in communities in general. And so making it face to face, making it real and authentic, these are all places where you can start from. They're great starting points to make great things. So I just want to challenge you to do that, to get out there. And if you're staying in touch with us, we're in the Tampa Bay area, but we're doing Film Bar Mondays soon. Just keep in touch with what we're doing. And we'll be working on some of the projects I mentioned. Feature film called Thin Days, 2 short films as well coming up. And I'm working on a variety of things. I've got some events I'm working on, interesting events, but also our shows like this one, right? There's another show called OFB, another show called Media Moses Weekly we're working on. And we're going to need people to help us with some of those shows.
Yeah.
So, I don't have anything else to say about it. I can't think of anything. What can you think of anything, Rebecca?
No, I think you covered it really well. And I like your message of be the friend that you need.
Yeah. Yeah, that was insightful advice from Tarra Lu. I think she's got some great stuff on her videos. Awesome. For being an artist. And she almost made me want to take up painting again, like,
yeah.
she got some cool stuff on there.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I'm one of those people who I just want to do every form of art at some point. I see the beauty in so much of it.
Yeah.
You know, and just to like spend the time like this week, I was not all week, but like in the last 2 days, I was working on my script for The Divided Kingdom, which I don't plan to film for years. Like I don't plan to film it, but I love the subject.
Yeah.
It's about the northern kingdom of Israel and the southern kingdom of Judah. It's basically like a biblical Western. And it's like Sergio Leone in Israel. Like, and it's seedy, it's raw, it's dirty. Like it's very realistic. It's very violent. It's a very violent story.
Yeah, it really is.
And I'm thinking, is the faith-based community ready for this kind of story? Because if they're not, it might not matter. It might be coming right at them. You know, like, and if they want to throw a hate at me, go for it, man. Like, you know, but it's like, this is a cool story, man. Like, straight out of the Bible. It's basically the story of Elijah and Ahab and Jezebel. Like, it's straight up cruel and disturbing, almost like a horror film, but not. It's more like a dirty, violent Western. Like it's just like, I don't know. And there's some parts that are very Asian. Like, I don't mean to just lump Asian film all together, but what I mean is like Akira Kurosawa. There's some Akira Kurosawa in there, and because oftentimes the war scenes in Japanese film and you know, well, specifically Japanese film, there's some cool stuff, man. It's like, you know, just the idea of someone shooting a bow from a horse, that's a skill not many people possess.
Yeah.
But people in the ancient day did this stuff all the time. And so that visual, it just doesn't leave my head. It's so skillful and just incredible. But like, just the idea that you could make a film like this is just it's so exciting, you know?
Yeah, it really is.
But like, yeah, we'll wrap it up, and love you guys. Thank you so much for hearing me out on networking. But it's something we need more of. You know, we need larger, bigger, more robust communities, and it's often just not happening. So, all right, where can people find you, Rebecca?
You can find me at Rebecca Loves Jesus on YouTube and Facebook, and Jesus Loves Rebecca on Instagram. And where can people find you and more about what you're doing, Jon Croft?
Thank you. Yes, yes, I am here on X. You can find me at Jon Edward Croft. You can find me at Cultural Warfare with Jon Croft on YouTube, and at Locals, I'm culturalwarfare.locals.com. But generally I'm like at Jon Edward Croft on Instagram and on X. So.
And head writer at MediaMoses.com.
Yes, you can find me at MediaMoses.com. That's our bigger project, so which we hope to grow into massive size. with your support, of course. All right, thanks everybody. We love you, and stand up for the culture, and we'll see you next week.